Hey, welcome everybody to my new podcast, I guess you would call it. My name's Gino. I currently live out in the Bay Area, Concord, California. So for the men in black, if you need a spy on me, I just gave you where I live, so make it easier for you. No, but yeah, I just want to start this podcast because UFOs and UAP phenomena. That's when it comes to that, I'm like a huge nerd, and I believed in extraterrestrials ever since I was a kid, and and shows like Ancient Aliens and guys like Jeremy Corbell, Commander Fravor coming on Joe Rogan, it just reinforces like, you know, I'm like, yeah, it's true, right? I'm biased, but now it's really interesting. We're in a situation where you got these government officials, guys that are working counterintelligence, pilots, they're starting to see or come across these UAP or UFOs. And it's getting captured now on, I'm sure the military cameras nowadays, right? 4K, who knows, maybe even 8K. But they're getting, getting these craft on camera, and nobody really knows what it is. I mean, I'm sure they don't want to say, right? Everybody's like, they always ask the question, is it NHI, right? Non-human or entity, right? And or non-human intelligence, right? And nobody wants to admit it. And I don't blame them. I don't blame our government. We go with what we know, right? But for me, it's pretty awesome, right? Like I'm starting to see our government. Now they're more open to it. They're acknowledging it. Of course, there's those that right don't acknowledge it, and I mean, yada yada, right? I see both sides. I mean, and then I know there's skeptics, right? And some of them have good points, and some, their arguments aren't very strong. But when it comes to UFO UAP, when it comes to UFO UAP phenomena, most of the pictures that we see are grainy, blurry. You don't really know what it is, right? And then there's those people that have, eyewitness testimonies, right? The way they describe, this craft, circular discs, moving at, Mach 20. And, I think the difference now is we're picking these things up on our radars, right? Like, Dr. Michio Kaku and Neil Tyson DeGrasse's mentioned, like, we need more data, right? And now the radars are picking up this craft. Now I'm sure we can measure the speed of this craft, and our government's scratching their heads. A lot of people think it's potentially Russia or China. And I listened to I think it was Luis Elizondo, his podcast, and I think I doubt it is. It's their technology. And the only reason I think that, and again, I'm shooting from the hip here. I'm not reading up on all these articles. I could be wrong. So if I'm wrong, so be it. It's not the end of the world, right? But if it is their craft, then that's a huge risk, right, to our country. Definitely, poses a security threat, right? They can just go past our radar systems. Our craft can't take them down. That poses a lot of risk. I mean, I know some spy balloons were shot down, but that's a spy balloon. It can't move Mach 20 vertically, rotate and just get out of there. I mean, it's just gonna be up in the sky, for a while, until we figure it out. It's from China or somebody, one of our rival countries. Now, and I know a lot of people. I think if it is, let's say, let's beg the question, if it is extraterrestrial, um, I think, um, from what I'm hearing, it's still considered a risk. It's not as big of a risk as with Russia or whatnot, but you know they're saying it's a 2% risk. They're saying that these UAP have the ability to turn on and off our uh, nuclear systems, right? Or our nuclear weapon system. So I found that interesting. I guess there was a situation where they were able to turn on one of Russia's nuclear weapons system. So from that perspective, I could see that being a risk. But I mean, it's something from another world, or just even with those capabilities, it's not really much we can do. I mean, I think we've been seeing them since, like, what, 1947. I'm sure I've heard there's been documents of or it's been documented that people in ancient times have been seeing these things, even before the Roswell incident. I mean, if it's something like that, then maybe, from a risk assessment, it's not, I mean, we should, pay attention to it, but it's not like, I don't think that's our main threat. But again, I don't know what what photographs and images the military has, or our government has at this point. Um, and yep. So let me get to my next topic. So another thing, and I saw an interview, I think it was with Dr. Michio Kaku. I guess the question was posed, why don't these, if it is extraterrestrials, or, why don't they just show themselves, interact with us? And I think Dr. Michio Kaku, he sort of just, I guess his explanation is, they're probably not that interested in interacting with us. It's like us interacting with the squirrel. And that makes sense, right? Like, it could just be more monitoring, kind of like, I saw a documentary, I think it was about a month ago. There's people that monitor whales' health. I mean, they could just be monitoring our health, monitoring our planet, and just, paying attention. And, now that we have nuclear capabilities, it's probably caught their eye. I'm sure, I mean, they can notice patterns, and we may be a potential concern for them, maybe not right now, but maybe in the future. So yeah, so many interesting things. And also in the UFO hearing, they mentioned, that there's departments that might have potential extraterrestrial bodies. So that was pretty interesting. It kind of ties back into the Roswell incident, crash retrieval and recovering alien or extraterrestrial bodies, or as people want to say, NHI, Um, and yeah, I think it's possible. I mean, when that crash occurred, right? I believe the first reporting in the newspaper was a UFO crash, right? And then it got changed to a balloon, military balloon crash, right? But I mean, from I think at that time, with World War I and World War II, going on, right? And a lot of people's belief systems were different, right? A lot of people were more religious. I'm sure, at that time, society probably would have freaked out, if they just stuck with the story. Also, I think too, from a just, you know, let's say you find something unique, right? You discover something now, from like a military perspective, maybe we don't want our adversaries knowing that, okay, we recovered um, something from out of this world, we don't want them knowing we're reverse engineering this, and, because, I mean, even if you look at it in general, right, military could be testing craft and weapons, and you're not gonna know about it until there's a war or something. So um, you don't really want to give up that information to your adversaries, right? It gives us an advantage, right? And I'm sure it sounds like other countries have retrieved craft, and but yeah, so kind of that was interesting. And another thing was interesting, I guess the whatever department Luis was in, I guess they weren't concerned about, these old stories, because I think, if we dug into that, we can find more information, but I guess they want to know what's current, right? What we're seeing now and stuff. I guess it makes sense, right? You don't really care about what happened 40 years ago. It doesn't apply now. We want to know what craft we're seeing now, what's going on. So that was interesting. I could be wrong, but I think one of the members of Congress also mentioned that these NHI could have possibly manipulated humans, or the evolution of humans. So now, I might be mixing that up with another podcast, but yeah, I've heard that theory, and me, I don't throw out that theory, but I think evolution, people that study evolution, right, have said that's most likely not possible. But then again, you know, we manipulate, a lot of things. Just look at our food, right? GMO, genetically modified, right? Cows, right? You make them more meaty. Chicken, plants, so I mean, if we have those capabilities to manipulate our own environment, I mean, maybe not to the extent of, well, if you look at dogs, I mean, we can't exactly, do what we want, but all the hybrids. So, I mean, who's to say that, to throw that, idea out? Um, and I know that's something that people don't want to talk about, but I mean, it's just an interesting theory, Um, and I think like Dr. Michio Kaku mentioned, and I think many others, we've advanced so much within the past 150 years. So it's interesting. And some people say, are the crash retrievals sort of like us giving a monkey a cell phone, you know, or and you know, you never really know. But but yeah. So I guess just to bring it back, you know, yeah, I think the UFO hearing is, good for the UFO community. Um, and, I think science in general, um, you know, science in general.